Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. So in the Bhagavad Gita, we have completed the second chapter, which is basically the essence of the teaching. The entire teaching, what Sri Krishna wanted to say, all of Vedanta, has actually been taught. But then why are there 16 more chapters to go? There are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. The thing has to be explained in detail. You will see a new chapter starts where Arjuna asks a question. There are certain things which are not clear, and Arjuna asks a question. When Arjuna asks a question, we say, yes, that's what I wanted to know. And so a new chapter starts. The third chapter is called Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga. The second chapter is Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga here means the way of knowledge. And the third chapter is Karma Yoga, the way of, or the yoga of action, not the way of action, the yoga of action. Before we get into this, among the many commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita over the last, say from Shankaracharya's time onwards, many great philosophers, saints have written commentaries in Sanskrit, different schools of Vedanta, and afterwards in other languages too, down to our present day. And of course, there have been many translations, including one last year here in America, and there was a review, I think in New York Times or something, somewhere. And the reviewer said, apparently to read the Gita is to be seized with a desire to translate it. So there are endless translations. And Yale University last year conducted a summer camp on the Bhagavad Gita, on the English translations of the Bhagavad Gita, and they made a collection of all the English translations that have ever been done of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, among the ancient commentaries I refer to, of course, Shankaracharya's commentary is famous, Shankara Bhashya. I refer to that. I refer to this one, which is Sridhara Swami's commentary. It's called Sridhara Tika or Subodhini Tika. Tika means a gloss. It's not a full-fledged explanation. It's just certain difficult words and phrases are elucidated. It's a very, very nice short commentary. There are different kinds of commentaries. Bhashya, Vartika, Tika. This is not the time to go in depth, but just a few words about them. They had a whole system of commentaries and sub-commentaries and sub-commentaries. So the original texts like the Upanishads or the Bhagavad Gita or the Brahma Sutras, so great teachers would write their own commentaries. So the original commentaries were called Bhashya. Bhashya is a full-fledged commentary where the writer, the commentator, is expected to set out a full system of philosophy. So, if Shankaracharya wants to establish non-dual Vedanta, his Bhashya should reflect arguments to establish non-dual Vedanta. On the same text, the same Upanishads, the same Bhagavad Gita, the same Brahma Sutras, but Shankaracharya gives a lot of arguments to say why non-duality is the import, the point of all of these teachings. The same texts are taken up by others, like Ramanujacharya, for example, 200-300 years after Shankaracharya, who writes commentaries, full-fledged commentaries, Bhashyam, but where he gives arguments to prove a qualified monastic interpretation of the same Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, especially Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutra and so on. So that's one kind of commentary. What is it called? Bhashyam. Bhashya. In fact, in the Himalayas, if you go to the monks there, Shankara's followers, they call Shankaracharya Bhagavan Bhashyakara or Bhashyakara Bhagavan, the master teacher, the master commentator, our Lord, the master commentator, Bhagavan Bhashyakara. Then there is another kind of commentary called Vartika. Vartika is in verse form. It's a commentary, on the first commentary, on the Bhashya. What does it do? What's the point? It's not to establish a new system. It's to clarify points which may have remained obscure in the original commentary. So to give an example, Shankaracharya wrote a commentary, Bhashya, on the Taittiriya Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, for example. And then the Vartika was written by Sureshwaracharya, who was maybe the senior most of Shankaracharya's, eldest, and certainly one of the most learned of Shankaracharya's disciples. I'm talking a lot about Shankaracharya. It's relevant. This week, I think yesterday was the birthday of Shankaracharya, and day after tomorrow I'm going to speak about Shankaracharya. So Sureshwaracharya wrote the Vartika on Shankara's Bhashya. So Shankara, in Advaita Vedanta tradition, Shankaracharya is known as Bhashyakara, and Sureshwaracharya is known as Vartikakara, the writer of the Vartika, of the verse commentary. So what does the Vartika do? It takes up the original commentary of Shankaracharya and then clears points which may be obscure, which may have remained untouched upon by Shankaracharya. So it comments on Shankaracharya's commentary, but the Vartika is in verse form. They say in Sanskrit, there are definitions of what is a Vartika, what is a Bhashya. The Vartika definition says, Uktanukta Duruktancha. Ukta means whatever has been said by Shankaracharya, the Vartikakara has a right to comment on that. Anukta, what has not been said by the Bhashyakara, by Shankaracharya, the Vartikakara has to fill up the gaps in explanation. Duruktan, which are said but difficult. In Shankaracharya's commentary, it's difficult. So that has to be clarified. And there are commentaries like this one, which are called tika. The English word is gloss, where just the words of the original are explained a little more. The tikakara, the writer of this gloss, has no right to set out a full-fledged system of philosophy. Has to just follow the original and give a simple commentary. This is used to teach the novices. For example, Bhagavad Gita is taught twice to the novices in Belur Math, where the novice monks are trained. So they're once, in the first year, they're 2 years training. First year, they're taught the Bhagavad Gita beginning to end with the help of this commentary. And the second year, they are taught the same thing all over again with the help of Shankaracharya's commentary. So before one goes on to something like Shankaracharya's commentary, it's easier to take up this one. But there are many others. Why I'm saying all this, there's a point to it. There is another commentary which is almost contemporary with this one. Madhusudan Saraswati, who was a contemporary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya. He was a great, great philosopher. He wrote a commentary, an independent commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, strictly according to the teachings of Shankaracharya, non-dualist commentary. That commentary is called Gudhartha Deepika, the lamp of the profound inner meaning of the Bhagavad Gita, which is a very beautiful commentary, written about 500 years, 600 years ago. So, in that Madhusudan Saraswati's commentary, Gudhartha Deepika, when he begins the third chapter, what we are going to do now, when he begins the third chapter, he takes the occasion to give an outline of the entire teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter-wise, in one paragraph. So, which is a very masterful exercise. Now, I'm going to tell you what he has said. But before that, a caution. We are always told that read the original before going to the commentaries. We are told. And there's a reason why. Because when you go to the commentaries, the commentators have an agenda. So they want to paint the Bhagavad Gita as a non-dualist text or a dualist text or some kind of particular angle is there. Before your mind gets colored by that, you can take up, you should read the original. Just go through the original verses. Then you might say, then what is the point of reading the commentaries? The point of reading the commentaries is these are very profound thinkers. They are great saints. They are enlightened souls. So their reflections are very valuable Very enriching. So, no, I read only the original. Well, even if you read the original, you are interpreting it. If you're thinking at all, then you're interpreting it. And your interpretation is at the level of your understanding, of your personality, which is good. One should make that effort, but also enrich one's understanding by looking at these commentaries. So, with that caution in mind, that Madhusudan Saraswati is painting a picture. So, what he says is, in the first line, he gives an outline of the entirety of spiritual life. He says, first, by the practice of karma yoga, I'll tell you very quickly what he says. First, by the practice of karma yoga, one's mind is purified. From the purity of mind comes the fourfold qualification for Vedanta. You remember? Viveka, the discernment between the eternal and the non-eternal. Vairagya, a dispassion for the non-eternal. Shat Sampatti, the sixfold discipline, sixfold treasure. What are they? Shama, control of the mind. Dhamma, control of the senses. Titiksha, a spiritual fortitude. Then Uparati, withdrawal from sensuous enjoyments. Samadhana, focus. Shraddha, a faith in the teacher and the text. So sixfold, these will come. And mumukshutvam, an intense desire to be free of samsara. These four, they are called sadhan chatushtay, the fourfold qualifications for Vedanta. With this, the Vedantic study becomes effective. Effective means leads to enlightenment. If these are not strong enough, you may understand Vedanta, you may attend, you may like Vedanta, but you will still crib and complain. It's not delivering. So it's not Vedanta's fault. Vedanta did tell you that you need these fourfold qualification. Where do these fourfold qualifications come from? From purity of mind. Where does purity of mind come from? Karma yoga. So the performance of work in the spirit of karma yoga leads to fitness for Vedanta. Remember, whose interpretation? Krsna does not say this directly, but this is Madhusudan Saraswati's structure. It leads to fitness for Jnana Yoga, for Advaita Vedanta, for Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta. Then he says, Sarva Karma Sannyasa. Then works are renounced. One renounces ritualistic works and worldly works and now dedicates oneself to Vedanta Vichara Sahita Bhagavad Bhakti Nishtha, he says. The next stage is, along with this Vedantic inquiry, what we are doing here, a deep devotion to God is cultivated, leading to, he says, Tattva Jnana Nishtha. Enlightenment arises, and then Nishtha, one stays with that enlightenment. Tattva Jnana, knowledge or realization of the reality. What is the reality? We know in Advaita Vedanta the reality is Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi. I am the Absolute, that thou art. That becomes a reality. And Madhusudan Saraswati says, next you stay with it. Tattva Jnana Nishtha. Stay with it. The result of staying with that will be, he says, avidya nivritti, ignorance is removed and one enjoys jivan mukti, enlightenment freedom while living. Freedom while living. Until, he says, until the results of the prarabdha karma, the karma which generated this body, until the results of that are exhausted and this body drops off, it dies. And so then he says, next is videha mukti. Videha mukti means the body drops off and that enlightened person remains as Brahman, as in its infinite nature as Brahman. All of this in one sentence.
And what is the sentence?
Oh, I have to memorize it then. I should have got it, right? I'm almost tempted to bring it and read it out to you. All right, if you remember, I'll do it next time. Okay, remind me, I'll do it next time. In one sentence, very beautiful, the whole of spiritual life. But the chain is, to repeat once again, from Karma Yoga, purity of mind, through purity of mind, the fourfold qualification for Vedanta, and with the fourfold qualification of Vedanta comes renunciation of all works. Interesting, we have to think about this. Renunciation of all works, karma, sarva karma sannyasa, combined with, he says, Vedanta vichara, Vedanta vakya vichara, Bhagavad Bhakti Nishtha, cultivation of Vedantic inquiry with devotion to God, leading to Jnana Nishtha, enlightenment and staying with that enlightenment, leading to Jivan Mukti, freedom while living, leading to finally Videha Mukti, freedom after the dropping away of the body. This is the whole scope of spiritual life in Advaita Vedanta. Then he goes on, what does each chapter do? So he says, second chapter gives you the essence of the teaching, whole teaching. Then he says the third chapter tells you about Karma Yoga, which is going to tell you how to remember what is Karma Yoga, to give rise to purity of mind. Then the fourth chapter and the fifth chapter, they tell you in more details about Karma Yoga and the enlightenment arising out of it, how to practice Vedantic Shravana Manana, especially Nididhyasana. Sixth chapter is about Nididhyasana. At the end of the sixth chapter, he says the first 6 chapters. Okay, here's one more thing which Madhusudan Saraswati says. According to him, you know the great Vedantic sayings, Mahavakya, that thou art, Tat Tvamasi, that thou art. That stands for Brahman. Thou stands for you. You are that thou art. According to him, the whole of Bhagavad Gita, 18 chapters, can be understood as that thou art. So the first 6 chapters tells you what you really are, thou. In Sanskrit, Tvam Padartha. Tat Tvamasi, Tat means that. It's very close to the English. Tat or that. Tvam means thou. Tat Tvamasi, that thou art. Now, the first 6 chapters tell you who or what you are. Not the body, not the mind, the witness consciousness beyond the body and mind. That's where the first 6 chapters culminate. Tvam Padartha, he says. Then the next 6 chapters, he says, from chapter 7 to chapter 12, tells you about that. Here that means Brahman or God, Saguna Brahman. Not Nirguna Brahman, Saguna Brahman, not the absolute, the God of religion. So chapter 7 to chapter 12 is cultivation of devotion to God. Understanding what the ultimate reality is and cultivation of a devotional attitude taken to that. That is chapter 6 to chapter 12. The nature of God and devotion to God. Then chapter 13, he says, brings the two together. That thou art. The Aikya Jnana, the oneness. So actually, God is not God, you are not you, you are pure consciousness, existence, consciousness, bliss. God is also existence, consciousness, bliss. That way you are one and the same. Just as the wave and the ocean. Ocean is like God, wave is like the individual. But both of them are actually water. Yes. So that is understood, he says, in 13th chapter. He says, Prakriti Purusha Viveka, the understanding of what is consciousness and what is nature. Kshetra Kshetragyan, 13th chapter. Madhusudan Saraswati says, what is 13th chapter? It tells you about Tat Tvamasi, brings it together. Then 14th chapter, enlightenment, Jivan Mukti. Realizing that how one lives, the word used in 14 chapters, Gunatita, going beyond the 3 gunas. Enlightened, living at the enlightened life. 15th chapter, he says, Paravairagya, Purushottam Yoga. That means one is established as I am Brahman. What is life like? What is it? What is that like? 15th chapter. 16th chapter, manifesting the divinity in life. He says, Daivi Sampat, the so-called divine qualities to be cultivated. Not at that time, from the very beginning. So that your enlightenment is expressed. Literally, if you put it in very simple words, one becomes a saint. The saintly qualities, divine qualities. 16th chapter. 17th chapter talks about the specific kind of Shraddha. He says, Sattvic Shraddha, necessary for developing divine qualities. And the 18th and the last chapter, according to Madhusudan Saraswati, is a summary of the teaching of the entire Bhagavad Gita. Putting it all together in the 18th chapter. So that is Madhusudan Saraswati's picture of the Bhagavad Gita. Again, if you have read the Gita, you might say, nice, but I have a couple of questions. Yes. See, the thing is, when you're trying to draw a picture, summarize in one paragraph, 700 verses of so much material is packed in there. You have to oversimplify. So, is it really true that the entire Bhagavad Gita is that thou art tattvamasi? Maybe not, but it's certainly one way of looking at it. That's one way of looking at it. A non-dualist would be very happy with that way of looking at it. Tattvamasi. First 6 chapters, tvam, thou, the real nature of you. The next 6 chapters, the real nature of that, Saguna Brahman, God. And the last 6 chapters, bringing them together, that thou art. Neither the Jiva nor Ishvara, but Nirguna Brahman, the Absolute. All right. That's so much for the big picture. Now back to chapter 3. What's happening now? In chapter 2, do you remember Krishna had concluded? Very beautiful verse. Sthita pragya, the nature of the enlightened person. Esha brahmi sthiti partha nainam prapya vimuhyati stitva syamantakalepi brahma nirvana mrichati. This, O Arjuna, is the state, the Brahmic state, the state of the Absolute, being identified with the Absolute, fully enlightened. Even if one gets a taste of it at the very end of one's life, at the very last moment of one's life, one still attains nirvana. So this is what he ended with. Now Arjuna has a question. Third chapter, first verse. Arjuna uvācha, jyāyasī chet karmaṇas jyāyasī chet karmaṇas matā buddhir janārdana tat kim karmaṇi ghore mam niyojayasi keśhava. So Arjuna asks a question. He says, if knowledge, jnana, enlightenment, is greater than, superior to action, then why are you pushing me into this terrible action, O Krishna? Now, what is behind this question? There is a deep misunderstanding, a very natural misunderstanding behind this question. He says, clearly I had some problem and I came to you. Chapter 1. Chapter 2, you started teaching me. Second chapter. And the first thing you taught me is, you're not the body dies, but we still go on living. You're not even the mind, beyond the body and mind. You are the spirit absolute. You are existence, consciousness, place. And the way to, and then what do you have to do? You don't have to do anything. You have to realize that. You already are one with God. You already are divine. You're just missing it. So the solution to the problem is to realize that I am Brahman. And this realization is done by knowledge, jnana. That's what you taught first. And then at the end, you taught me how the enlightened means lit up by what? Not neon lights, lit up by knowledge. So knowledge, if one gets this spiritual knowledge, what is that enlightened person like? At the end, you taught me that. So far, very clear. You are telling me to cultivate knowledge, jnana, spiritual knowledge, spiritual realization, enlightenment. And I'm on board with that, Arjuna feels. That's what I want to do. I don't want to fight this horrible war. I just want to, you're right, I will go and study and meditate and become enlightened. Very good. But the catch is, in between, you started talking about duty and work, and you have right to the work alone, not right to the results of the work, and do not take to inaction, but do karma yoga. You started talking about that. And you say that you should go and do this thing itself, what you're about to do. Which one should I do? You see, Arjuna's confusion is, it seems Krishna is recommending knowledge, jnana yoga. Having talked about jnana yoga, how good it is because it is the solution to your problems. After that, in the conclusion he says, now do karma yoga. There's a cognitive dissonance here. Tell me one. Which one am I supposed to do? You think you are recommending spiritual knowledge and enlightenment, and then you say that do action. Go and fight this war which is in front of you. What is the nature of Arjuna's question? His question is, he thinks there's a deep-rooted misunderstanding. He thinks there are actually two. But they're not actually two. They are actually part of one spiritual journey. I need to fly out to, say, California. Now what do you say? Swami, take a taxi, a cab to LaGuardia, and then take the flight to LAX. I say, tell me one, you're confusing me. Cab or flight? He said, no. Take both. How can I take both? You have to take both. Without taking the plane will get you to California. That's the way people go. But without taking the cab, you can't get to the plane. It's or the subway or whatever it is. So, one is preparation, one gets you ready, and the other one delivers the goods. So, karma yoga is preliminary. It prepares. What Madhusudan Saraswati said, by karma yoga, purity of mind and the fourfold qualification, then by jnana yoga, enlightenment. So preparation is necessary. Those fourfold qualification are necessary. If we don't have that, if we do not do karma yoga, enlightenment is not possible. And if we do karma yoga, but we do not do jnana yoga, then again enlightenment will not happen. It is knowledge which leads to enlightenment, but that knowledge will not dawn upon us without karma yoga. Often where the shoe pinches is because we lack the necessary qualifications. And the necessary qualifications, jnana, yoga, yogyata. Yogyata means qualifications. They come from a performance of unselfish action, karma yoga. What Krishna was telling him is this. Look, you have come to fight this battle. Arjuna's situation. Remember, battle here is just a way of putting it. Almost none of us are going out to fight a battle. What it means, the battlefield is your life. It could be your school, your home. And again, don't mistake me. Battlefield, we go back home and start quarreling with husband, wife, children. Why? Because we learned we have to fight. We have to fight the battle. No, not that kind of fighting. Yes, you have to face up to what life presents you with. Now, Arjuna, you have come to the battlefield. After all, Arjuna, before all this Bhagavad Gita and all, he's a warrior. He has come to the battlefield. He has worked hard to put together that army and to fight against the evildoers. It's only at the last moment that his nerve fails him and that he feels that, what's the point of fighting this battle? I don't want the kingdom at the cost of all this bloodshed. I know those are the bad guys, but is it worth killing so many of our kinsmen and all of that? So Krishna says, you came here for selfish reasons. This is the meaning of Krishna's teaching. You came here for worldly reasons. Arjuna came to the battlefield to get the kingdom, which is rightfully his and his brothers. He came here to get the kingdom. He came to the battlefield to take revenge on the wrongdoers. He came to the battlefield to punish the wrongdoers, all of which are allowable, are perfectly all right within the norms of society. But now he has lost interest in these worldly goals. Now he is enthusiastic about the spiritual struggle which Krishna has told him. That I want to become enlightened. So he feels this is not necessary. I'm going to go away. I'll just stay in the Vedanta society or something like that, I won't turn up for my job tomorrow. And you take the kids to school. I'm not interested anymore. I have no more worldly pursuits. People do that actually. And what this question is a deep question. Krishna now says, what you were doing for very good worldly reasons, the same thing now you must do, same thing, but now you must do it as a spiritual practice. Why? After all, I want enlightenment, I am Brahman. How is turning up in the office and taking the kids to school and doing the groceries, how is that going to make me realize I am Brahman? Krishna is going to tell us, those same activities, it's karma, the same karma performed unselfishly now for the purpose of enlightenment serves not to give you enlightenment, serves to purify the mind, get the mind ready. Get the mind ready. Ready for what? For the enlightenment which will be given by Vedanta, by that thou art, by Vedantic knowledge. So if Vedantic knowledge gives me enlightenment, let me go straight to Vedanta. Won't work. I remember reading Swami Ashokanandaji in San Francisco in the 1950s. He's writing a letter. He says, I know when I tell you to do karma yoga, many of you are rebellious. He's writing to his disciples. You're grumbling and thinking, oh, Swami doesn't think I am ready for meditation. Well, I will show him. And then he writes, yes, you will show me, but not in the way you think. Yes. I'll come to you. Sitting down for meditation. What are the signs? Sitting down for meditation. Sleepy. I want to be the Buddha, but sleepy Buddha. Swami Prabhavanandaji in his book, Sermon on the Mount According to Vedanta. One of the Beatitudes is, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. See how direct that teaching is. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And Madhusudan Saraswati says, the first thing required is a purity, inner purity. How do you do that? How do you become pure in heart? Karma yoga. And Swami Prabhupada says, how do I know? I don't think I'm impure. How do I know that I need karma yoga? Swami Prabhupada, he just gives a very simple example. He says, right now, stop reading. Just try to hold on to thought of God in any form. My Krishna or my Christ or whatever it is, just hold on to that thought. You will notice within seconds, it's your mind. You have made up your mind, I'm going to think about Krishna now, or Shiva now, or whatever, or Om. My mind, I want to make it do something. Within seconds, the mind has gone this way or that way. Why? That, he says, if it does that, and for most cases it does that. If it does that, it shows deep-seated impurities. What are impurities? One needn't feel bad about it. This is just conditioning. Lifetimes, this lifetime and many lifetimes past, we have spent in chasing the things of the world. What are the things of the world? Form and sound and smell and taste and touch. Nama, Rupa, Gandha, Sparsha, Shabda. The attractive things of the senses. And the mind has become colored with that. Now when I want the mind to meditate, it won't. It'll come back to that, what it finds pleasant. So that is the impurity of the mind, and a powerful way of cleansing the mind is karma yoga. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God directly. If you put it in Vedantic terms, blessed are those whose minds are pure, so that they will get enlightened. They will realize, I am Brahman. Do you still have the question?
Yes, it's Swamiji. Talking about, Arjuna
Yes.
and the coaching of Lord Krishna in battlefield. Do you think the history would be different if Buddha, while leaving his palace, had encountered Lord Krishna?
No, it wouldn't be. It is the same teaching. I remember reading an article written by one of our modern, wise commentators, wise within quotes. I call them wise guys. He said, Krishna, look what Krishna did in the Gita. He taught Arjuna to fight a battle. So bad. If Arjuna had met Buddha would have taught him, given him the message of peace, and there wouldn't have been any battle. I just have the picture of Krishna and Buddha both going. People who have not the slightest interest in spiritual life. The whole aim is worldly. Now they fancy themselves to be commentators on anything from A to Z. And then they make this It was a nicely written article. Makes no sense whatsoever. If you have read the Gita, if you have read the Dhammapada, these are not social tracts. These are not, something to do with how society should be run. What is? It's not the Charter of the United Nations. It's not that. These are teachings for enlightenment. People who make these comments, that article, these are people, if you push a little further, if you look at the background of the person, that person has no interest in spirituality, is convinced that there is no God, no enlightenment, is a committed materialist, and therefore when with those eyes they look upon religion, whether it is Christ or Krishna, Buddha or Chaitanya, Vedanta or Bhakti or whatever it is, when they look upon religion, they see only the social side of religion, only the ethical side of religion, the problems with gender and the problems with caste. All of those are interesting dimensions. They are not the core of religion. So, yes. So, would history have been different? No, they wouldn't have been different. They would have given exactly the same teaching. But, yes, it could have been clothed in different language and different stories and a different approach. Both, here Krishna is talking about moksha. He is even using the word nirvana for God's sake. And Buddha is talking about nirvana. He just wouldn't say for God's sake. He'll just drop that God part of it.
For your sake.
Somebody joked that, the poet who talks about the loss of belief in God. He talks about the God-shaped hole in the human psyche. And somebody quipped that the Buddhists replaced the God-shaped hole in the human psyche with a hole-shaped God. Shunya, the void. All right. So, jyāyasī chet karmaṇas. If you think better than karma, buddhi. Buddhi here means knowledge, jnana. Here buddhi. So words differ according to context. Buddhi may mean intellect. Here buddhi means knowledge. What knowledge? Knowledge of the Atman, which you have taught in the 2nd chapter. If you think that is far superior, O Krishna, O janārdana, tat kim karmaṇi ghore mam niyojayasi. Why are you pushing me into action? And not good action, bad action. This is terrible action. War is the worst possible action in human affairs. Why are you pushing me into this? I think one reason is, if spirituality can be practiced on the battlefield, the worst possible place in any kind of human affair, then how much more so we can practice spirituality in our office, at home, and in our communities. We often think it's difficult. It's so much. You are saying that because, Swami, you are a monk. A monk stay in ashrams or in mountaintops. But Krishna is not a monk. Arjuna is not a monk. And they are not in an ashram. So it is possible to be spiritual in the midst of the battlefield of life. I think that's the meaning of this whole thing. Krishna is not advocating violence. Remember, Krishna tried to stop it. And not only that, if this was about war and peace, this was about war and peace, for 1,500 years at least, Hindus have been reading the Bhagavad Gita and studying it and writing commentaries. All the commentaries I told you about. Shankaracharya's commentary, Sridhar Swami's commentary, Ramanuja's, Madhva's commentary, Madhusudan's commentary, so on. All the old commentaries down to the present age. None of them ever even take it as a question of, is it a question of war? Should we fight wars or should we not fight wars? Even that question does not come up at all. Everybody from the very beginning, without any doubt, takes it as a teaching, a spiritual teaching about one's personal life. How could Mahatma Gandhi derive 150 years of Mahatma Gandhi this year? How could Mahatma Gandhi derive non-violence from the Bhagavad Gita? If it was about war? Not at all. It's not at all about that. It would be of no interest to 1,000 years of Hindus reading it if it was about fighting wars. It would have no relevance to our day-to-day life. It's not about that. So karmaṇi ghore mam. Ghora means terrible, horrible action. You're pushing me into horrible action. So the doubt in his mind is, he's thinking Krishna is offering him an option. Choose one or two, one of these two. Pick one. Pick one, karma yoga or jnana yoga. Krishna is not offering him an option. Krishna is telling him about the spiritual journey, which starts with karma yoga and culminates with jnana yoga. So Arjuna follows this up with the second part of the same question. Verse number 2. Vyāmiśhreṇeva vākyena, vyāmiśhreṇeva vākyena, buddhiṁ mohayasīva me, buddhiṁ mohayasīva me, tadekam vada niśhchitya, tadekam vada niśhchitya, yena śhreyo āpnuyām, yena śhreyo āpnuyām. With a mixed message, that's a good way of putting it. Vyāmiśhreṇeva means mixed. With a mixed message, you are confusing me as it were. Buddhiṁ mohayasī. Here buddhi means intellect. In verse number 1, buddhi means knowledge. Means knowledge of the self. Who am I? Here buddhi means intellect. You are confusing my understanding, my intellect, with a mixed message. As if. Mohayasīva. As if. Why as if? Because Krishna is the teacher. Here he is not actually accusing the teacher. That would be irreverent. You see, this is a very interesting thing, that when you approach a spiritual master, when you approach spiritual teachings, in fact any kind of teaching, the correct approach is, what is reverence? The reverence is, I'm sure you are right. I'm sure this is right. I don't get it. That's why I'm asking a question. There's another kind of question, this question of a skeptic. There's a person who wants to learn and a person who is already who is convinced that this is all nonsense. So the question of the skeptic is, I know you are wrong, and I'm going to prove that you are wrong. Yeah. So if you go into a class, into NYU or Columbia, and go to a physics class or a math class, convinced that the professor is a liar and the textbooks are fake news, and so you're not going to learn anything. Not going to learn anything. Does that mean then you can't ask questions? Of course not. You must ask questions. See, this is the fine line. It's not a question of believing something. That approach will not work in Vedanta. Look at what Arjuna says. Tadekam vada niśhchitya. He says, pick one and give me a clear, one-pointed instruction. Tell me one thing. Now, tell me one thing is like asking for orders, like a soldier. Okay, tell me to do this. When should I get up? How many times should I repeat the mantra? How many times should I bathe? What should I eat? What should I not eat? How should I sit? So those are very good instructions. And Krishna will give plenty of instructions times to come. But the core of Vedanta is not like a drill sergeant who's going to bark out instructions and you follow to the letter. No, one must understand. In Vedanta, one must understand. It's, after all, the path of knowledge. It works through your understanding. It works through your intellect. We're not talking about intellectual understanding here, but intellectual understanding is a must in Vedanta. One must grasp it first. And then that intellectually grasped truth deepens into enlightenment. It's still beyond the intellect, but it goes through the intellect. You cannot say, all right, I believe you. If you go to a class here, the math class I'm talking about, and the professor tells you about calculus or something, and you say, and he says, did you get it? He said, no, but you are great, I believe you. The professor is going to tear his hair. He says, no, I don't want you to believe me, I want you to understand. And to understand, one must ask questions. But ask questions with what attitude? I'm sure you are right, professor. I'm sure the textbook is right, but I don't get it. Could you explain it to me once again? Yeah. So that is the approach. And Arjuna, that's why he's saying, you are confusing me as if. I know you're not trying to confuse me. I'm confused. Why don't you tell me one thing? See, the deep-rooted misunderstanding is still there. One of the two. He wants one of the two. By cab or by plane. How do I get to California? Tell me one thing. Going back to this Madhusudan Saraswati's big picture. There is something he says there, just a little bit I want to touch upon this. Sarva karma sannyasa. Sannyasa literally means renunciation. Sannyasi means a monk. So there's a great stress on renunciation. But remember, here renunciation means renunciation itself. It does not literally mean a formal monastic life. It could be a formal monastic life. There are three options here. One is the traditional Hindu idea of the 4 stages of life. Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. The preparatory stage of life, the student life. Then the householder's life. You marry, have a family, and you're cultivating spirituality all throughout from the very beginning. Then a retired life. Children have grown up and gone away, and now you withdraw more and more from direct engagement with the world, and you concentrate on your spiritual practices. And finally, you leave everything, all worldly possessions, relationships, and you are alone in your search for God. That is formal monasticism. So one becomes a monk formally at the end. Who becomes a monk? Not everybody. One has to be ready for that. It's not compulsory, never was. One has to be ready for that, and one can become a monk. So that's option 1, path 1. Another way to formal monasticism is straight away from your preparatory state of life. This is from in the Upanishad, it's there. Brahmacharyadva, grihatva, vanatva. How do you become a monk? You can become a monk from your preparatory student stage of life, from your householder stage of life, and from the retired state of life. From any of the three, what is the condition? He says vairagya. The moment you have dispassion for the world, a search for God, a complete dispassion for the world, you are qualified to become a monk formally. So that's the second state. That's how, for example, we in our order, we become monks. This second option, that is from the very beginning, from before you get into householder life. That's one way also. But both of these are formal monasticism. That's also not really necessary. Is it necessary to become a monk? Yes. Is it necessary to become formally a monk outside? No. One must be internally a monk. That attitude and the spiritual attitude is one and the same. To be truly spiritual and truly monk-like inside, it's the same thing. So one can still be in the householder life. And once one makes up one's mind that enlightenment is my goal, then worldly pursuits no longer are my goal. That is what is meant by sarva karma sannyasa. That is what Krishna is actually recommending to Arjuna. Arjuna was ready to formally become a monk. Krishna says no. Third option, remain where you are. Keep doing where you are. This is the best way for spirituality for you. Transform your daily activities into spiritual practice. And go ahead. It is exactly like becoming a monk, but internally. So, and that internally becoming a monk is the real thing. Externally, one may put on robes and still be not at all monk-like. Internally, if one has desires. That is called disaster. So, externally, one gives up all monastic pursuits, all worldly pursuits, and internally, worldly desires are there. Terrible condition. It's much better to be in the world and have worldly ambitions and try it out and work there and grow spiritually and then let go of it. And remember, this is a one-way thing. It's not that you ever come back. I have now become monk-like, I've become enlightened, I'm a Jivan Mukta or something. Now let's come back to the job, and there are some other things which I had to do in life. So let me take. Now it's done. I'm a Buddha. Now let me go back, and I really wanted to check out that iPhone and a vacation in the Caribbean and those things I wanted. I didn't have time to do that. Now I can do that. No, that never happens. And people have a wrong idea sometimes. I remember, it's a funny story. I was, we get the vows of monasticism in 2 stages. First is called the vows of Brahmacharya, that you get after 5 years of joining the order, 4 to 5 years. And then after a total of 9 to 10 years, you become, one gets the formal vows of monasticism. So about 5 years in, the day I still remember, I got the first set of vows of being a brahmachari. I remember, I thought, well, I left home 5 years ago. Maybe I should tell my mom that I have got the vows. And I had a nice new name, a big new Sanskrit name. It's called Jnana Chaitanya. That was my name. So usually when you get the vows of Brahmacharya, Chaitanya name is given. That's how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his name was Krishna Chaitanya. That's why it's called Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His first monastic name was Krishna Chaitanya. My name was Jnana Chaitanya, which is a long name, which basically means one whose vow is knowledge. Jnana Chaitanya. Basically means a bookworm. Of course, yes. So I was quite proud of it. And those were days before mobile phones and all. And so there was one phone under the staircase in the old monastery. And you had to go there. It's quite a scary thing. It's like running the gauntlet, because there would be glares of older monks looking, why are you making a phone call? That's the whole thing. To whom and for what? So anyway, I thought I should tell my mom, because, it's, even if you're a monk or whatever, you have to impress your mom. So I went and called. So after 5 years, I told her, look, I've got my vows today and my new name is Brahmachari Jnana Chaitanya. And my mom said, good, now you can come back home. No. That's not the point. I'm sure if I had said that, I'm enlightened now, I know I'm Brahman, she would have said, good, now you can come back home. Swami Vivekananda's mother, she was very proud of him. When he came back from the West, having spread Vedanta to the West, the World Parliament of Religions, sort of given the message of awakening to his countrymen, starting the monastery, the Belur Mutt and all. So she came and she was happily moving around on the grounds of the new monastery, and she thought, my Naren has done this. Naren. And Vivekananda understood his mother's psychology, and he said to her, no, not your Naren. It's by his grace, Sri Ramakrishna's grace. He can raise 1,000 Vivekanandas from the dust if he wants to. It's not me. She even thought that, oh, he has done all these wonderful things. Good. This one last thing. I wish he would settle down, get married, and he has done everything else. So moms being moms. No, this is not child's play. It's not one more thing you do in life. This is the end of all activities in life. All the game of life, life after life, what we have done, it culminates in this. The picture that Madhusudan Saraswati draws before you is the ultimate story of our lives. That's what it should all go towards. There's nothing more beyond that. From the finite to the infinite. From darkness unto light, from the real to the unreal, and from death to immortality. That is the ultimate purpose of life. There's no coming back after that. That story I used to tell, the monkey mind must become a monk mind. So that is the basic idea of sannyasa, of renunciation, of monasticism. Some religions do not have monasticism. Judaism does not have monasticism. In India, Sikhism doesn't have monasticism. Islam in general does not have monasticism. Though in all religions, whether they are whether it's Judaism or Zoroastrianism or Islam or Sikhism, there are always people who are like monks, like prophets, like ascetics. There were in the desert, the prophets of the Old Testament. They used to live like monks. So that was always there. But formal monasticism may not be there in some religions. But if you actually look at the teachings of that religion, basically turns your mind into a monk mind, basically. The really serious seeker becomes like that. That common teaching is there in every religion. Some religions have formal monasticism. Hinduism. Buddhism is heavily monastic. Jainism is heavily monastic. Christianity is, again, like Hinduism, has both. Catholic Christianity especially has monasticism from the very beginning, from the time of Christ onwards. So there always have been monks and nuns in Catholic Christianity, yes. And the Orthodox Russian Church, Eastern Orthodox, they have monasticism. Yes.
I have a question not directly related, but it's about Chidabhasa.
The reflected consciousness, yes. What is the question?
Is it the same as Brahman or is it an object?
The question is Chidabhasa the same as Brahman or is it an object? First, one must realize what is Chidabhasa. The awareness that we feel right now, that is called reflected consciousness. Reflection of what and in what? When you look at your face in the mirror, your face is the original face, and what you are seeing there in the mirror is the reflected face. Now, you are the original consciousness, Brahman, Atman, whatever you call it. But the mind catches, within quotes, as it were, this consciousness and channels it, what we feel right now. We feel aware. This awareness which we feel, is it Brahman? No, not Brahman in itself. Notice something about this awareness. This awareness which we feel now, it increases and decreases. Sometimes you feel very alert. Sometimes you feel dull. Sometimes you feel sleepy. And sometimes you are complete. Sometimes it's gone. Deep sleep, this reflected awareness is gone. So that which comes and goes cannot be Brahman. Pure Brahman, Shuddha Brahman, Nirguna Brahman, it cannot be Nirguna Brahman. That which is subject to increase and decrease. Sometimes sharp, clear awareness, sometimes dull and diffused. It cannot be Brahman. Because Brahman is constant. Brahman does not come and go. So Chidabhasa is not Brahman, but if you say, you keep saying everything is Brahman, so Chidabhasa also should be Brahman. Yes, so Chidabhasa is Brahman plus name and form of Chidabhasa, in the sense that everything is Brahman. The book is also Brahman, the body is in that case also Brahman, the mind is also Brahman, the rocks and stones are also Brahman. Ultimately, how? Brahman plus Maya, name and form. In that case, Chidabhasa is also Brahman. But if you are asking Brahman as Satchidananda in itself, what we must realize ourselves to be, then Chidabhasa is not that. It's like the reflected face in the mirror. It's very close. It's very similar. That's why the mistake can happen. In Chidabhasa, reflected awareness, one must ask, what is it a reflection of? From there, just like a reflected face, if you look at the reflected face and you can turn in your understanding away from the reflected face towards yourself. In the same way, turn in your understanding away from the awareness which you are experiencing towards yourself, the real awareness, capital S, self. Yes, you had a question?
Yes. So in Sri Madhusudana Saraswati's framework, karma yoga is a preliminary practice
Yes.
for moksha. Is that because it cannot be an end unto itself? Because one could, for example, get attached to karma yoga and have some slight sense of ahamkara that one is doing good works?
Not only that. Is karma yoga a preliminary practice? Yes. Remember, framework in Advaita Vedanta, in Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, not just Madhusudan. Madhusudan is very loyal to Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya, this book, Sridhar Swami, they all have that framework. What is the framework? Just keep it in your mind. The framework is problem, solution, method. Keep 3 rows, make a matrix, 3 rows. Problem, solution, method. What is the problem? Impurity of mind. What is the solution? Purity of mind. What is the method? Karma yoga. Notice, it doesn't say it will give you enlightenment. What will karma yoga do? It will remove the impurities, make your mind pure. Problem, scattered mind. Solution, concentrated mind. Method, dhyana yoga, Raja Yoga. Remember, again, it does not say Raja Yoga will give you enlightenment. It will give you a concentrated mind. Remove the scatteredness and give you concentrated mind. Then with a purified and concentrated mind, come to the last stage. What is the last problem? Ignorance. I don't know who I am. What is the solution? Knowledge. How does that come? Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga will give you knowledge. That is enlightenment. So Jnana Yoga gives enlightenment. And immediately the mistake Arjuna makes is, oh, Jnana Yoga gives me enlightenment. Let me go straight there. Southwest will take me to California. I don't need Uber. I need Southwest. No, it won't work that way. That's why the first two steps have to be accomplished. The monkey mind has to become a monk mind. That is stage 1 and 2. Only that kind of mind, whether you are formally a monk or not, you can be a warrior like Arjuna also. With that kind of a mind, when you come to these teachings, it will lead straight to enlightenment. Before that, well, it leads to, I attended many classes, I really like that teaching, it's really cool, it's very deep, it's very profound. I can give lectures and write books about it. Are you enlightened? Not quite. It won't work unless those two levels are done. Somebody from California actually sent me a picture. It seems they have these Zen diaries. So somebody has published a Zen diary for 2019, and in one page, there's a quote. They have got quotes for every page. One page is, when the monkey mind becomes a monk mind, then you will be enlightened. Swami Sarvapriyananda. And the text was, congratulations, now you've got your own quote, you're being quoted. That monkey mind becoming a monk mind, that's the whole point of karma yoga. Yeah. That's why it's a preliminary practice. Buddhiṁ mohayasīva me. Tell me one, tadeka vada niśhchitya, yena śhreyo āpnuyām, by which I shall attain what is good. What is Krishna's answer? By now we know. With all this discussion, Krishna will tell you have to do both. Correct. We'll just read the verse. Verse number 3. Shri Bhagavan uvācha, Shri Bhagavan uvācha, lokesmin dvividha nishtha, Lokesmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta maya nagha, pura prokta maya nagha, jnana yogena sankhyanam, jnana yogena sankhyanam, karma yogena yoginam, karma yogena yoginam. O Arjuna, the path has 2 stages, and this has been declared by me since times past. Pura prokta maya nagha. By me it has been declared the path has 2 stages. For those who are in the stage 1, I gave it in 3 stages, right? So stage 1 and 2, the stage 1 of karma yoga and the stage 2 of meditation. Both of them together are karma yoga for him. He says, for those who are who are beginners, karma yogena yoginam. So preliminary practice, karma yoga. Jnana yogena. And then the next part of the journey is through jnana yoga, spiritual, the path of knowledge. For whom? Sankhyanam. Here the words are all technical. Sankhya means those who are fit for. Sankhya means atma vishaya buddhi. That means atma jnana, self-knowledge. Those who are fit for self-knowledge, for them, jnana yoga. So, should I sign up for the soup kitchen and stop coming to Vedanta Society? Don't do that. I have to do karma yoga. This is not. So Krishna has told me to. No, what it means is it must all proceed together. It must all proceed together. But what it certainly does not mean is that I want to become enlightened, so I'll stop doing whatever I was doing in life, and now I've become spiritual. No, that is foolishness. I've seen it happen again and again. People, it's disastrous. In India, I've seen people run off from their schools, especially young people, run off from their schools, and I've seen them in the Himalayas. I myself, when the first time I went to the Himalayas, and it was going wonderfully, sitting and meditating, the magnificent, the snow peaks and the glaciers, and you beg for food, and the simple food, and the atmosphere itself is so divine and uplifting. You spend your time in prayer, meditation, study, and in solitude. I thought, this is great. I had just become a newly minted monk, 10 years. This was after I got my final vows. This second time I didn't call my mom. So after I got my final vows, a newly minted monk, and off I went to as high as I could, 10,000 feet Gangotri in the Himalayas. And I thought, this is great. I should have come here. Why did I spend 10 years in the ashram, working in the school and the kitchen and the office? And I should have come straight here. And then I immediately realized, no, it's because I spent those 10 years in training that my mind is taking straight to meditation, exactly what he says. Jnani yogena sankhyana. Once your mind is prepared, then it settles down. Even there is a whole spectrum. Some of the monks who stay there for years and years, I got to know them. After some time, they open up and they become friendly and speak with you, if you're a monk. And they said to me something interesting. They said, we watch the monks who come here. Those who come here, we watch them. 2-3 days after that, they become restless. Those who come here to meditate, we don't mix with them. We know that they were not going to last. After 4 or 5 days, just think about it. Mostly we are driven to such places out of a restlessness of our mind. I don't like this anymore. I want peace and calm and a sublime. Yes, but the peace and calm and sublime, after a few days, it is just rocks and wind and ice and absolute solitude becomes absolute loneliness. If the mind is not prepared, it's a terrible thing. Society is a support. People can go crazy that way. So after some time, people can't take it. They run away. I remember this person, young man, he was working for, the progression, idealistic. So he wants to do something for society. Joins an NGO, what's called a non-government, a non-profit here. Doing some work. He was working for a non-profit. He told me. Then he got upset. Why? You can predict. If you're mature enough, you know. The young idealistic man comes into non-profit wanting to change the world. And those who have experienced the world, you will say, we know the next step. What happened? Politics inside the organization? He said, yes, how do you know? Everybody knows. You don't have to tell me. Then this is horrible. The world is horrible, the non-profit is also horrible. Now what? The only last thing remains is God. So off I go to the Himalayas. And then I sit in a cave and meditate. He used to come, for the first few days he used to argue with me. After that, he began to trust me and like me. And then he opened up after a few days. He said, Sach bolta hu Mahatma ji, kuch acha nahi lagta hai. I'm telling you really, oh monk, I don't like anything. I'm now unhappy. Everything is unhappy. Even this is it's making me unhappy. Now where do I go? Where do I go now? Why is it? The problem is not outside. There are problems outside, but the real problem is inside. There's a saying, wherever you go, there you are. There you are, yes. In the cave also, you are there. And you don't like living in a cave with yourself. Now imagine, if you can't bear your own company, why should anybody else bear your company? Yeah. The real attitude of a monk, I've heard it from a monk who stayed there in the Himalayas for decades and decades till the end of his life. I asked him, he was very happy, he was sitting there, I'll end with this, surrounded by kids who were visiting in summertime. They used to play with him. He looked exactly like the Lord of the Rings. There's the magician, the Gandalf is there. Exactly like that. White dress up to the ankles and long beard, much longer than Gandalf the magician. And long dreadlocks which he used to keep curled up. He was Punjabi, so very tall and fair, powerfully built. Old man. And the kids loved him. Because they used to sort of stare at him. He's something amazing. So I said, see, you are happy. You're surrounded by people who love you, and they're coming to you. People trust you and coming to you for advice, and children playing around in the ashram. But when it's winter, 6 months in the winter, with snow and ice up to your knees, and remember, if it's 25 degrees outside, it's 25 degrees in your room too, because there's no inner heating. Your bed is also 25 degrees. So in that condition, what do you do then? When it's a howling wasteland of ice and snowstorms. He has seen snow leopards there in the ashram, prowling outside. So his answer, now I am happy, O monk, and then I am happier. Ab maje mein hu, tab aur bhi maje mein rehta hu. I'm very happy now, monk. And at that time, I'm even happier. That's possible because you have found something, the mind is prepared. Otherwise, sharply cutting away all this, blaming the world outside, is a recipe for disaster, spiritual disaster. Yeah. Karma yoga is important. And we'll pick up from this in the next class. We have a visitor. This month is for visitors, right? We're getting so many visitors. Swami Tadananda, he is the president of our ashram in Fiji Islands. Yeah, so he's going to come and he's going to talk about Bhagavad Gita for mental wellness. So he's going to speak about it next. So basically, the theme of karma yoga in our modern perspective is this: enlightenment and God realizations, all very well. What about the rest of my life? I have a family, a job, a community, my own finance, health, all of that. What about that? All that comes under karma yoga. So that's why karma yoga is very, very important. It's the answer to the practical questions of spirituality, apart from all the high philosophy. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Rupanamastu.